question, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
You smoke, right?
Yeah.
Were you smoking when you said you better than Nas?
Let's get this right. I'm way more influential than Nas. And listen, Nas was nice when I was in high school. When I was in 10th grade, Nas came out. Nas was dope. We appreciate him. He had a little bit run. But Nas always came up second.
In hip-hop, beef is part of the DNA. But every now and then, someone crosses a line, not with a diss track, but with a microphone and a hot take so wild, the entire culture stops and watches. This time, that someone is Jim Jones. Jones walked into Shannon Sharpe's Nightcap podcast and did the unthinkable. Claimed he's more influential than Nas. Not more popular today, not more active, not more trendy, more influential. Period. Now, let's pause. Nas isn't just another rapper. He's the guy who gave us Illmatic, who built a legacy of storytelling, lyricism, and cultural impact. He's a hip-hop pillar. When you say you're more influential than Nas, you better have the numbers, the history, and the catalog to back it up. But Jim, he brought none of that. Just confidence, and a whole lot of it. Fans didn't waste a second. The backlash came fast, loud, and brutal. The internet pulled up charts, interviews, albums, and playlists. Everyone started asking, is Jim Jones serious? Then, from the shadows, 50 Cent made his move. No hashtags, no freestyles, just a single IG post reviving federal documents from the Tekashi 6991 trial, and the message was clear. Jim, don't forget who you're talking to. What started as a wild podcast take turned into a full-on storm. Public humiliation, gang allegations, old beefs, and a three-way war between credibility, legacy, and petty genius. This is the story of how Jim Jones tried to rewrite history and how 50 Cent pulled out the receipts, all while Nas stayed completely silent. Jim Jones didn't stutter. On Nightcap, when Shannon Sharpe brought up the Nas comparison, Jim leaned into it. He said, and I quote, "I'm way more influential than Nas." He didn't flinch, didn't laugh, didn't even blink. He followed it up by saying, today's youth doesn't even know Nas. That kids born in 2003 didn't grow up on Illmatic. They grew up on Dipset energy, BB Simon belts, flashy style, Harlem bravado. The way Jim framed it, Nas is outdated, a relic. He respected him once, admired him even, but now he's outpaced him. He said, check the charts, check the streets, I'm who they follow. But here's the thing, influence isn't just about fashion or Instagram followers, it's about legacy, about whose lyrics are studied, whose verses are quoted 20 years later, who still packs out Madison Square Garden. Fans responded immediately. They brought up Nas's recent run, King's Disease 1, 2, 3, Grammy wins, Hit Boy collaborations, sold-out shows, historic catalog. Meanwhile, Jim's biggest hit, We Fly High, a classic, sure, but one hit doesn't put you above someone with a 30-year legacy. Still, Jim wouldn't back down. He even challenged Shannon to a gym battle when the pressure got too real. Instead of defending his catalog, he tried to outbench press the criticism. That's when things got embarrassing, and that's when 50 Cent logged in. 50 Cent didn't tweet, didn't post a diss, didn't go on a podcast rant. Instead, he dropped one image, an old federal document from the 2019 Tekashi 6991 trial. The doc referenced Individual One, a mysterious person who, according to prosecutors, was allegedly caught on wiretap instructing gang members to violate Tekashi for snitching. Fans and hip-hop insiders have long believed Individual One was Jim Jones. Why? Because the voice sounded familiar, because the timing lined up, and because Jim himself was reportedly associated with the 9 Trey Bloods. Though never charged or named officially, the streets and the blogs have connected the dots for years. By reposting that transcript, 50 didn't need to say a word. The implication was crystal clear. You talking crazy about Nas? Let's talk about you. It was petty, it was strategic, and it was devastating. 50 Cent's history with Jim goes way back. This wasn't a new rivalry, it was an old grudge waiting for the right trigger. And Jim handed it to him on a silver platter. Podesat let the internet do the rest. Blogs resurfaced the clip. Fans pulled up wiretap audio. Twitter threads broke down the case detail by detail. And once again, Jim was trending. But for all the wrong reasons. Jim responded with memes, IG posts, old Dipset photos. But he never addressed Individual One directly. Because how can you? When 50 Cent drops paperwork, your mic can't save you. This isn't new. The tension between Nas and Dipset, especially Jim Jones, has been simmering for over 2 decades. It started in 2002 when Nas went on a Hot 97 rant and randomly dissed Cam'ron, calling his album trash. Dipset didn't take that lightly. Jim, loyal to the core, came for Nas hard. On mixtapes, in interviews, in the streets, he said he'd smack the kufi off him. He kept throwing shots in songs, but Nas barely responded. That's always been Nas's power. He never wastes energy punching down. He lets time and discography do the talking. Over the years, Jim flip-flopped. One minute he's praising Nas as an icon, saying he shaped his style. The next, he's taking subtle jabs to go viral. But when Jim brought this ancient rivalry back in 2025, on the biggest podcast stage of his career, he wasn't just poking Nas. He was inviting 50 Cent to remind the world who Jim really is. Because when it comes to credibility in hip-hop, Nas is untouchable. Jim, not so much. Especially when the shadow of Individual One is hovering over every bar. So when Jim said, "I'll wrap circles around Nas," most people didn't even laugh. They just cringed and waited for 50 to reload. You gotta love Shannon Sharpe. He's not a rapper, not a DJ, not even part of the music industry. But when Jim tried to double down on his Nas comments during the interview, Shannon pressed him harder than any hip-hop outlet ever would. First he asked, "Were you high when you said that?" Jim smirked. "Maybe a little." Then he kept pressing. "You know Nas is one of the greatest, right?" Jim danced around it, deflected, and eventually challenged Shannon to a workout. "Yeah, you heard that right." Jim got so rattled, he tried to turn a rap debate into a Jim showdown. "You want to see who's more active?" he asked. "Come see me in the gym." At that point, Shannon clapped back. "You want to flex muscles, but can't flex bars." The entire internet paused, because it took a former NFL Hall of Famer to say what Fat Joe and Jadakiss didn't say when Jim made similar claims on their show. Shannon dragged Jim for trying to outwork out his way out of a lyrical hole, and when Jim accused Shannon of chasing views, Sharpe replied, "This is the biggest podcast you've ever been on, period, oof." And while the comments section roasted Jim, 50 Cent just kept watching, silent, patient, petty. 50 Cent plays chess while everyone else is playing checkers. He doesn't jump into every beef, but when he sees an opening, and especially when it involves an old enemy like Jim Jones, he moves with surgical precision. This wasn't just about Nas. This was about 50 reminding the world that Jim's credibility has always had cracks. The Individual One angle gave him an open lane to not only clown Jim, but to potentially bury him. And what makes it scarier? 50 still hasn't truly responded. No song, no sit-down, no podcast rant, just a federal file drop, a few laughs, and a quiet reminder. I have ammo. Fans are now wondering if 50 is building towards something bigger. A documentary, a diss record, a mini-series. Because when 50 gets quiet, that's when the bomb usually drops. Jim, meanwhile, is stuck in defense mode, posting more Jim selfies, daring people to step in the booth, calling out old heads for being nostalgic. But Nas? He stayed silent through it all. And in hip-hop, silence from a giant like Nas doesn't mean fear. It means you're already losing, and he doesn't even need to say a word. Jim Jones thought he was making a statement, and maybe he was, just not the one he intended. He wanted to spark conversation, boost relevance, make headlines. But what he really did was hand 50 Cent a loaded weapon and paint a target on his own back. And as the dust settles, 3 things are clear. 1. Nas didn't have to lift a finger. His fans, his resume, and his discography did all the talking. He's the definition of influence, and no podcast hot take can change that. 2. 50 Cent reminded us why he's the most feared man in hip-hop beef. He didn't yell. He didn't diss. He simply uploaded the truth and let the world spin. 3. Jim may still have heart, but this time he picked the wrong battle, with the wrong legend, at the wrong time. So, where does it all end? Maybe 50's next move is around the corner? Maybe Nas will break his silence with a verse that ends Jim's argument in one bar. Or maybe this is already over. Because when your biggest flex becomes a federal nickname and your loudest shout gets drowned out by laughter, you don't need a diss track to say you lost. Jim Jones challenged the throne, and all he got in return was silence, smirks, and 50 Cent holding court with a document labeled Individual One. Case closed.